Yeah. All right. Everything looks good. All right. So we are recording the interview of David Fuchs.
Fuchs, yes.
All right. This interview is being conducted by David Morse from Wright State University Veteran Voices Project. The interview is being recorded at the Veteran Military Center at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio. It is 3:28 p.m. on August 2nd, 2016. All right, so let's begin with when and where you were born.
I was born in Dayton, Ohio, January the 5th, 1945.
Okay. And who were your parents? What were their names?
Helen and Clark Fuchs.
Okay. And what were their occupations?
My dad was a Dayton fireman, and Mom worked for, she was kind of doctor's, she wasn't a nurse or anything, but she worked the office for this doctor.
Okay. And did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I had 3 brothers.
Okay. And did they serve?
One sister that died at birth.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, none of them served. They were always either too old or too, they were always too kind of old. And the one that probably could have served, he had been married and had a couple kids, so he kind of got around Vietnam that way.
Mm.
Now, I mean, he wasn't dodging it. I mean, but they weren't taking guys with kids at that time.
I see. Now, how old were you when your sister died?
She died in 1960. Let's see, I graduated in 64.
Okay.
So I was 16, 18, somewhere around there.
Okay.
64, yeah.
Man. Sorry to hear that.
Toughest day of my life. I
Yeah.
had to tell my dad that.
Oh, wow. He wasn't there?
He was between the hospital and home, and she died.
Lord. Damn.
Bad day.
I can understand that. Okay, so what did you do before the service?
I worked, I graduated from high school in 65, got a job at the phone company, and I was working at the phone company. I started in June and got drafted and then enlisted for an extra year in 65, September.
Okay. So you got drafted into the Army?
Army, yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what year was that you got drafted?
65.
65 that you got drafted. And what was your MOS?
Well, like I said, I kind of forgot that a little. I think it was a 39D something.
Okay.
I was an antenna, what they called was an antennaman. I went to wire school, then I went to pole school,
Mm-hmm.
then I went on to antenna school, we built steel towers,
Okay.
antennas and things, and we tested them down in Woodbridge, Virginia for the Army.
Okay.
And then we were sent various places around the United States to either tear down antenna fields or build antennas.
Can you describe to me a little more about the purpose of building these antennas? What was the intent?
Radio communications.
Radio communications. So the men on the radio communicators or the guys carrying the radios on their backs. That's what they were using was those antennas?
No, not necessarily. Those radios were specific to that stuff. Ours were for long range communication.
Okay.
Long range, radar. But I mean, just the long range stuff. I mean, from the comm center that I worked in, I could call anywhere in the world.
Wow.
And get you.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is like pre-satellite technology.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they had at the time, they had shortwave, and then they had satellite, and then we had ground, the cable under the ocean.
Right.
And that's the one we used. We didn't use that other stuff, that cheap stuff, so couldn't hardly talk on them.
Okay. So let's go back. You were drafted into the Army. What was basic training like?
You know, I had a guy named Sergeant Davis, and he was rough. And him and I got in it the very first day. We went toe to toe. Look at my name, and you'll see why we went toe to toe. If you know what I'm saying.
Spell your last name for me.
Fuchs.
Right. Okay.
And I was in the third rank back. There were 4 ranks. And he yelled, "You know what?" And I didn't answer him.
Understandably.
And he yelled it again and didn't answer it. By this time, he's shoving his way through the ranks. Got in my face. And I said, "Sergeant, you can call me anything you want, but I will not let you defame my father's good name and answer to it." Of course, I'm down on the ground doing push-ups, and he's yelling and carrying on and doing his thing. And I got up, back in line. He went back out to the front, and he called my name outright, and I answered him. So carry on a little bit further, the ranks finally broke, and we were kind of taking a break. And he came over. That's what I said about this guy. He didn't apologize for what he did, but he said, "Look, that will never happen again while you're on this base. I will make sure that none of the other sergeants do that. It's done." But fast forward 3 weeks down the road, we're doing hand-to-hand combat training. "Mr. Fuchs, you're my volunteer for the day." He tore me up one side and down the other, buddy. I mean, he laid me out in that. But it was a good sense, if you know what I'm saying. He was a great one of the best sergeants I ever met in the Army. He was there for a job, training us for war, literally. And he was good. Sergeant Davis, big old tall, huge guy, not fat or anything, but just huge. When he put that smoky hat on, boy, he just was that much bigger. And boy, he could march. He could march you into the ground. But I enjoyed Sergeant Davis. So that was at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Fort Knox, Kentucky was where you had basic training.
Had basic training, yeah.
Okay. All right. And so let's talk about why you were drafted. You were drafted because
I was single.
Okay.
You know, I was at the right age, 65 and 66, I think, if you read your books. 65 and 66 was the big push to send guys to really take control of the war, supposedly. There were thousands and thousands of guys drafted and sent there specifically around that time. So I think I just kind of drew the lucky straw, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. How did you feel about being drafted?
Well, I wasn't really thrilled about it, you know what I'm saying, but I was always taught to do my duty, and you know, it's just, I never thought about going to Canada or places like that or doing things like that. I mean, I had a job, you know. A lot of guys, when I was in the service, they literally had nothing to go home to. They were getting 3 squares a day in the Army, and they stayed. But I mean, I had a job, and then eventually had a wife. You know, I married while I was in the service, before I left for Vietnam. So
great.
Had a son while I was over there. So, I mean, you know, I did my job. That's the way I always looked at it. Would I do it? Would I be like these kids today? I admire the hell out of these kids today. Because they're signing their name on the line, knowing what they're getting their asses into. And they're still doing it. Mm-hmm. And they got the same shitty leadership we got. We had.
How did your family feel about you being drafted?
You know, my dad was my best friend. And he never said anything one way or the other. He was kind of a private guy. But if I needed something done while I was there or while I was in the service, it got done. My mom, I think she was scared, you know, but my family didn't, you know, we loved each other. We weren't one of these huggy, feely type families, but we knew we were loved and we were brought up right, and, you know, you just did your thing. So I never really asked them what they thought or how they felt. You know, we just got through it.
So tell me about tech school, or your training after basic training.
AIT.
Yeah, AIT.
AIT, I went to Fort Ord, California, for what they call wire school. And what that was doing is, you know, the guys that run the wires between units so they can talk on the crank phone. Mm-hmm. That's what those guys did. I learned that. Now, I was a cable splicer for the phone company before I went in the Army. Climb poles, put wire together, things like that.
So you had some experience.
I had some experience. So I went to that wire school for 8 weeks. And there I had the opportunity to go to poles. They call it pole school. You know, they called it pole school, and they taught you to climb. Well, I already knew how to climb because I did it. That's what I did for a living. Mm-hmm. But we had some fun there. Ran into a sergeant, and we were Fort Gordon, and here we are. We're out there. We put. You ever seen a phone man with hooks on his guys with hooks on?
Yeah, the gaffs.
Gaffs.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're marching to the pole yard with gaffs on our feet. No, but they didn't know what guards were. Well, I'd have been fired from the phone company if I'd ever walked around like that. In the phone company, you walked up to the pole, you put your hooks on, you took the guards off, went up the pole, come down, took them off, put them back, you know. When we got there to that pole yard, we're marching along, we got to that pole yard, and this sergeant, he's about 20 yards from the nearest pole. And he looks at us and he said, when I get done with you guys, this is what you're going to be able to do. And he turned around and took off on a dead run up that pole, and sat on top of it.
20 yards away.
20 yards away. And
Man.
I'm thinking to myself, if you'd done that at the phone company, you'd be fired before you got off of that pole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but then we had a little go around while I was there too. We were up a pole the second day. About 60 of us up the poles. We're throwing footballs around, softballs and basketballs.
On the poles?
On the pole, you know, you're belted in and hooked. And,
sure.
I mean, it's, you know, get your balance. Well, about an hour into this session, this one kid, and we were all kids, but I said this one kid, he had a panic attack. He finally realized he's 40 foot in the air, I guess, and he panicked. So the sergeant gets us all down. This kid's standing up there yelling and crying and just, you know. I'm watching this sergeant, he's looking around, he's, where's that phone man I got? Mother Bell, where's she at? Where's he at? And God, I'm looking around thinking, God, somebody raise your frickin' hand, you know. I finally raised my hand. He says, go get that kid off the pole like Mother Bell taught you. Well, I had never been taught how to do it, but I knew. I'd seen it in a book. So I got up the pole, and what you do is you hook your belt under his belt. If he slips, he ain't going any further than your belt. And that's the whole system to it. Well, I sit there and I start talking to this kid, you know, going, and the more I talked to him, the crazier he got. Just nuts. And finally, I got a little tired of this. I pulled myself forward, pulled my belt up, reached in my back pocket, pulled out a knife, opened it up, and put it on his belt. I said, look, you stupid ass, you're going off this damn pole one way or another. And I'm looking at him, and I glance down at the sergeant, and the sergeant's eyes are bigger than his. And I act like I was going to cut that belt. And he shut up. I said, now look, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take one step. You're going to take one step. All the way down this pole. We did it. Got him down. Of course, he washed out. I got down, I put the knife in my back pocket. I'm walking back to the ranks, and the sergeant looked at me. He says, Mother Bell never taught you that. I said, his ass is off that pole, man. He never called on me again. But it was, you know, it was fun. It was that just the way it was. And that was the fun thing I had at AIT pole school. Then we went, when we got done with that and graduated, there was 350 of us or 400 guys. We're all standing there. Guy said, we got another school we need some volunteers for. Boy, and a bunch of guys started raising their hands. He said, wait a minute. You got to hear the qualifications before you come to this school. Now I'm thinking school, 8 more weeks staying out of Vietnam. That's what I'm thinking. He says, well, first thing you got to do to get into this school is you got to climb a 75-foot telephone pole on hooks. Well, that eliminated about 397 guys. 390. Well, 7 of us ended up there. And we volunteered for it. Well, we never had to climb that pole. Because while that guy was talking to us, a week before, a kid went up one of these poles, and there are 2 poles that they're spliced together up at the half, where they cut a thing and bolt the poles together, and then you go up higher. Well, the kid went up above the splice, and it broke off. Got killed. So we never had to do that, but we had to tear a bunch of them down, if you know what I mean. So we tore a bunch of them down, and we didn't have to go up them, we just sawed them off. But went to that school, 7 guys, and we were as different as night and day, if you know what I mean. And this sergeant, we had this old sergeant from Georgia, good old Southern boy, E7. And how this one kid got in the class, I don't know. Because all the poles I seen him climb, he burned at least once. He never really climbed up a pole and come down without getting off that pole. Now, I never used the belt method, climbing a pole or coming down. I climbed up, then belted off. I unbelted and climbed down. Because if I cut out, I'm going away from that pole. I don't want splinters from here to Kingdom Come, if you know what I mean. I've seen it too, it's bad. But this kid, he always had a hard time climbing down. We were taking our tests, and that day, and he was the last guy to climb, and he went up this pole, perfect, climbed it, and we had to bring this big old arm up, put it on our belt, circle the pole, put the arm down, and then come down. He did all that perfect. So he's getting ready to come down. And I'm sitting there, and if you've ever climbed a pole, the first step is always the hardest. You take that step, break, and you get into a rhythm coming down. The first step's always the hardest. He took that first step, and he made it. Perfect. Second step, perfect. Third step, perfect. Fourth step, perfect. He's on a 45-foot pole. About halfway down, he cut out. So he just pushes himself away from the pole. Now, we always had to wear orange hard hats. He pushes himself away from the pole in the orange hard hat. And, well, just as he got away from the pole, his left foot was still stiff, and he caught the pole. This guy done a backflip.
Oh, jeez.
Come down, landed right in front of that pole, facing that pole, cussing like hell. But the sergeant's sitting over there, and we didn't know who to go to. Him, thinking he might be hurt, or the sergeant, because he was choking on a chaw of tobacco. That sergeant about choked to death. He swallowed that whole chaw of tobacco he had. But we all passed, and we made it that, antenna school. We made it into the school, and it was a lot of fun. We went to the Pentagon and a couple places, and we got in trouble at the Pentagon because you know what your Army uniforms are like, sloppy, And every time we started climbing these towers, we started tearing pants and shirts. And so we asked for permission to kind of tighten them up a little bit. Well, we looked tighter than MPs, if you know what I mean. We had our pants on tighter than MPs. And at that time, I wore about a 34 waist, but I had big arms from all the climbing. And we had a job to do at the Pentagon, put up a tower on top, 130, 40-foot tower up on top. We were, all four of us, we were going to meet the sergeant there. So we parked the car and went on into the Pentagon. And we were about 20 yards from the safety of being up on the roof. And here you got four guys with these tight pants, this orange hard hats, sunglasses. We're walking through the Pentagon. And we didn't wear regular Army boots. We wore lineman boots. They come all the way up our calves.
They've got the big heels on
Yeah,
them.
big heels, steel toes,
Sure.
the whole 9 yards. And we're walking through the Pentagon, and we're just about ready to hit the door to go up. And we walked by this door, and there stands an Army 3-star. And as we walked by, my glance, his jaw just went. He stepped out, and we took about 3 steps, and he stepped out and yelled, "Halt." Or no, as we went by him, we said, "Good morning, sir," and kept on walking. And he stepped out and stopped us. Turn around. We all turned around. And he's just standing there looking at us. He's going like up and down and up and down. Just who in the hell's army are you guys in? And all in unison, the four of us said, "Yours." "Get them hats off." Well, that's where we really got in trouble. Because I had a nice regulation haircut right here. I took that hat off, my hair fell down to about here. Needless to say, the barber was waiting on us when we got back to Woodbridge, Virginia that night. after putting that tower up. He come up about an hour after we were there, and we had the tower pretty well up. Two of us, two of the biggest defenders with hair, we were topside. And I heard the door slam and looked down, and here comes this 3-star. He grabbed that sergeant that almost lost his chew. And I could see this, him going like this and the sergeant going like this. It was, but we got haircuts that night. And it was about a month later I was in Vietnam, and a couple of the other guys, I don't know where these 4 guys went after that. I went to Nam, and they were 2-year draftees. I was the only 3-year in the crowd. So I ended up in Nam. So it was, it was interesting.
How long was your training altogether?
8. Well, basic was 7. AIT, the first one was 7. And pole was 7. And then antennas was 7 weeks.
Wow. Man.
I still had time to take that trip.
Yeah. Wow. So, what time then did you end up going into Vietnam?
I got there November the 23rd, 1966.
Okay. And
Matter of fact, November the 23rd of this year will be 50 years.
50 years.
Of me heading to Vietnam.
Wow. That's amazing. And, what did you do there in Vietnam?
Well, I didn't build towers, but I had experience with cable and stuff like that. And they put me in an Army comm center, and I dealt with, it was like a central office setup, central office type setup. I went to Pleiku first, arrived in Saigon, and then went to Pleiku in November. And then December, they needed somebody down at Nha Trang. Pleiku was up here in the Central Highlands, and Nha Trang was down here on the beach. And it was at an Air Force base. Our Army Comm Center was there. We had 3 big towers. Now, these towers weren't the type of towers that I built. These towers were built by cranes, and they were that big. But on January the 3rd, I think, I get a call from the major. I was a Spec 4 at the time. I get a call from him, get over to my office, I need to talk to you quick. I got over there, and the major says, we got a problem. Now, the major talking to an E4, who's got the problem?
E4.
E4 does. He says, I understand you did something with steel towers. I said, yes, sir. I built them and maintained them. He says, well, the Air Force is ragging on us. We got a light out on tower number 2. 130, 40 feet up. Now, the city of Nha Trang was right here on the water. The air base was right here on the water. There was a road that went around all this, and there was an 8-foot fence with Continental wire on it. And then that was the city. The fence was the only thing that protected us from the city. And on the other side of the city, there's this huge mountain, which they used to light up every night with the gunships.
Our gunships?
Our gunships, yeah, used to light them up.
Okay.
And he says, you're the only guy qualified within 2,000 miles. Change that light bulb. I said, okay. I said, get me a belt. Yeah, I gotta have a body belt. I ain't going up that thing without a body belt.
Right.
We got a body belt from the Air Force. We were a comm center and things, but we didn't have poles. We had just maintained 3 big antennas. And So, and I did some cable splicing there. We had a little hut that was out here where everything kind of came into, then went to the buildings, wherever there was communications. And I did some work on that, and I did some work inside, you know, routing calls through and things like that. So that was my job, basically. But then the highlight of the year was climbing that tower.
How long did it take you to climb that tower?
Took me about 10 minutes to get up there,
Jeez.
10 minutes to change the bulb, and 10 minutes down. You know, I took my time because it wasn't like the antennas that I climbed. You know, you just kind of walked up them. They were like antennas like you had in your backyard years ago, you know, on your house, things like that. It's kind of what I built, only they were 200 to 300 feet in the air sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I got up there, changed the bulb, come down. Now the most interesting part of this, I went to Vietnam in November. I just got an E4 strike 3 days before I left in October. A couple weeks before I left in October, I got an E4 strike. Go to Vietnam in November, I'm at Pleiku, get transferred down in December to Nha Trang. In January, the light bulb goes out. I changed the light bulb. February, I got promoted to Spec 5. Because the major said, looked at me, he says, that's the stupidest thing I ever seen in a war zone. I said, that's my job. I couldn't say no. I mean, you know, you were doing your MOS in the Air Force, and you tried to tell them, no, I ain't doing that, what are they gonna do? So
That's right.
I said, that's my job. So I did it, you know. So his reward to me, he said, the only thing I can do it. I'm gonna give you another strike. So, you know, made another 100 or so bucks, you know, which was good for me as far as I was concerned, you know. But that was the most interesting thing that I ever got into in Vietnam. And I'd say the most dangerous thing that I ever did in Vietnam. Our Camp David Special Forces camp, about 1.5 miles, 2 miles down the way, their choppers got attacked one night. Bombed, and how they got in, I don't know, because they had some big dogs running around that place. How they got in, I don't know. And that was kind of exciting that night, because at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm laying in the top bunk, and I hear this boom, and I open my eyes, and the chopper that was closest to me, and it was a good 200 yards away from me, it just exploded. Full gas tank. They had the charges on the gas tanks. And it looked like the building right across the street just blew up. You know, coming out of a sleepy fog. Mm-hmm. So, but that's the closest I ever got to anything. You know, I was never even issued a rifle over there.
Really?
Yeah, I never had a rifle all the time. I mean, I shot, you know, M60s and things like that on a practice range, but nothing other than building 12 to 15 hours a day.
So while you were at Vietnam, how did you stay in touch with friends, family?
Well, fortunately, I'm in a comm center, right?
Just pick it up.
Pick up the phone call. But mainly, I sent tapes to my parents, things like that, letters, you know. But occasionally I had the deal where I could call. And I had a funny thing happened over there. I was at the Special Forces camp, and I'm standing there, and I have my patch on my shoulder, and it's got this guy behind me. He says, "Hey, son, are you down at that comm center down there on the end of the runway?" And I said, "Yep." And I turned around, it was a 3-star. I said, "Yes, sir." And he asked me about, he says, "Oh, you're in that big comm center down there, huh?" "Yeah." And he started talking, And I knew what he was going. I knew where he was going. I said, "Well, you need to talk to your wife, sir?" He said, "Well, can you do that?" I said, "I can do anything in the world, buddy, when it comes to communications." I said, "But I work from midnight till noon." I said, "Give me your number over to base. Give me your wife's number. I'll call her in the States, and I'll hook you up." Now, I called his wife the first time. Panic. You know, she panics right away. "No, ma'am. No, don't panic." I said, "Your husband, the general, wanted me to call you. He wants to talk to you." I said, "I'm at a comm center on the base. I'm going to hook you up to him." So I got her to calm down. I hooked him up, and I told him, I said, "Sir, when you get done, just give me a call." I said, "Try not to be on a long time, you know, just..." I hooked him up to his wife once a week for the whole time I was there. He enjoyed that, and I got a lot of perks from it. We got cement for the base. We were building new headquarters and new barracks and things like that. We needed some cement, and the colonel, or the major, he says, "Oh God, this is going to be fun." I said, "No, it ain't. How much cement do you want?" "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm not going to tell you. You don't want to know." And that's the way we did things in Vietnam. We bartered. I called the general, told him what was going on. "How many you need?" I said, "We need 3 trucks. They'll be there Wednesday." I said, "That's good. That's what we need them for." Wednesday showed up. 3 cement trucks showed up. Major looks over at me. I said, "You don't want to know. You got your trucks. You got your cement." We traded things back and forth with the Air Force. Got anything we wanted. Also didn't mention that general's name. There it was.
Wow.
So that was a lot of fun there, you know, in that respect. And I took a couple trips throughout the country. We did a laundry run down to Cameron Bay. It was interesting going down the highway. We had rifles on the truck. You know, that was the only I wasn't issued a rifle under my name, but there were rifles available when we took these trips, and that was the only time I seen a weapon. You know, the whole time I was there.
What kind of camaraderie or friendships did you build there in Vietnam?
You know, I had one real good friend, and it was a shame the day we met what happened, because he was black and I was white. And I was in an 8-man tent waiting. I was the first guy in the tent. And he walked into the flap door open, the flap tent opened, and he walked in there. And he stopped dead in his tracks when he seen me sitting back there on a bunk. Standard greeting in Vietnam was, "Hey guy, my name's Dave, I'm from Ohio. Where are you from?" You know, I said that to him. You know, I said, "My name's Dave, I'm from Ohio." I said, "There's 7 more bunks in here, bud, take your pick. I got this one." And he looked at me weird. Being a 19-year-old kid from Ohio, I didn't understand what was going on at first. And I smiled at him, and he smiled back at me, and he kind of walked in, and we just started talking, just like you and I. He's in the same position I'm in. He's in Southeast Asia, not because he wants to be, because the government put him there. We just talked a little bit. I found out he was from New Orleans, Louisiana. Black guy.
Wow.
Young kid. Now this is where I got my first experience, black and white, what was going on down south compared to what was going on the way I was raised. You took everybody at face value. I was brought up, walk up to you, shake your hand. I want to be respected by you like you want to be respected by me. You know what I'm saying? I found out a lot about the South, but that very moment, we had been sitting in there talking for 10 or 12 minutes. And the next thing that happened made me ashamed to be a white boy. We heard a hellacious noise outside the tent. All of a sudden, the flap opened up and in walked these 4 guys. They were all 4 from Alabama.
White boys?
White boys.
Oh.
Now, I ain't gonna describe the conversation that took place the next 2 minutes. But there was no conversation by him and I, it was all by them. And they ended up getting the H out of the tent. They went to the tent next door, invaded that one, put up a rebel flag. And you know who these guys were? They were the MPs guarding our base. But you know, Will, I never heard any more from him. I stayed away from him myself. And Willie and I bunked basically side by side the whole time we were there. And I met another guy from Ohio. And we all kind of bunked together. But Willie never said anything about them ever bothering him. You know what I'm saying? He's like me. You didn't like him, he didn't go near you. He stayed in his own little circle. And but we were good friends over there. I've often tried to look him up, and I never, for some stupid reason, I never took his numbers down or anything like that. But but that was a real eye opener for me as far as race relations. Never raised that way. I was always raised to stick your hand out and shake, you know. But it was fun. He was a nice guy.
Let's talk about coming back home. How were you received coming back home
Not
from
good.
Vietnam? Yeah.
Not good. I come into Dayton. This was before all the little shuttles or concourse things to the plane and all that. You still had to walk from the tarmac into the thing. Got off that plane and I walked in, and what some guys have told you, I had the same greeting. I opened the door, there stands my grandmother, my wife with my son that I hadn't met yet, my 2 parents, and I think 2 of my brothers were there. And I opened the door and took a step in, and there's a guy standing there. And the greeting I got was spit across the front of me. Here's another one of them damn baby killers. Now I could have decked this guy. So easy. He'd have never knew what hit him, if you know what I mean. But you know, my parents are there. And I just calmly took another step and looked at him. And I said, "Get your record straight, fella. I got 5 of them." And just walked by him. I wish you'd seen the look on his face. I wish I had a camera. I really do. I wish I had a camera. But, you know, it just, that was the only bad greeting that I received. I took my uniform off, never put it on again, and I never mentioned for 20 years that I was in Vietnam. Because I had a problem. I met a guy in the Philippines coming home. Half an arm, half a leg. And the stupidity of the whole thing, if you've ever dealt with PTSD, and I've talked to people now and I know what happened, I got it in my mind when I seen this guy. I was ashamed to go up to him. And I was ashamed to admit that I was even in Vietnam. Because this guy slosh through the mud and the shit every day. And all I did was go to work 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day in a comm center. That's all I'd done. And I got it in my mind that I didn't do my job. So for 20 years, I felt that way. Never mentioned it, nothing. And finally, the woman that I'm married to today got me to this guy. And we talked about it. And we had a couple, 3 or 4, 5 sessions. And the very last session that we talked, this guy sat here and he used to piss me off. He said, "Oh, you worked in this cushy ass little comm center. You didn't do nothing while you were there, huh?" You know, it used to make me mad when he'd say that. And he knew it. And we were talking, and the last day I remember, we were there, and he says, "Okay," he says, you and your cushy little comm center here," he said, "I got some questions to ask you." He said, "In this comm center, in your travels running around this comm center for 12 hours a day," he said, "Did you ever put a phone call through? They got an airstrike someplace?" "Yeah. Yeah, we did that." He said, "How about, did you ever get an artillery strike to some hill out there?" "Yeah, I put calls through like that." "How about, did you ever get a medevac to somebody?" "Yeah, I did that." And he got up and walked out of his chair, you know, and he walked across the room and he didn't say nothing, letting me think. He turned around, he said, "I got one more question for you." I said, "What's that?" He said, "How many guys you think you kept off that black granite wall in Washington, D.C. putting that phone call through?" And it never registered from that day that I saw that guy, that. And I since read books about how many guys like me that were behind the lines. There was, I think it was 8 guys like me for every 1 guy that was out there in the bush. And, you know, and then I finally got my act together and, you know, got started with the VBA and things like that. But it was a rough 20 years as far as, you know, but that's PTSD. You know, that's the way it works. You can have the worst and you can have that. Nobody sees it. Nobody knows why you're feeling the way you feel. You know, so that was interesting. It was an interesting episode in my lifetime because I never talked about it and nothing. And I worked at the phone company for 35 and a half years. I knew 2 guys. One guy I went to grade school with, I knew he was in Vietnam. Because the job he had, he got it because he got injured over in Vietnam. They put him in the center. And then the other guy, he never left Vietnam. He had some battles up here. He was walking in the jungle, him and a guy were side by side. This guy got picked off by a sniper. And the thing that bothered this guy the most, why him and not me? And then a month later, another guy died in his arms. And he worked at the phone company, and the phone company job kept him alive. But he drank. I mean, you could walk into his cubicle and you'd know he'd been drinking. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. He retired. I retired in 2000. He retired in 2005, and he was dead 6 months after he retired. They found him. But anyway, what I was telling you, I knew those 2 guys. When I retired, I started going to retirement parties. There were 35 guys that I worked with that were in Vietnam. I had no idea that they were in Vietnam.
Wow.
Nobody talked about it. And that's the same thing that's going on today with these soldiers that are coming back. They're not talking about it.
Oh, that's very true. It's very true. It's
I don't know
really
if you were in, I don't know if you were in a wartime situation.
I was, but I was never deployed, thankfully. But yeah, I've seen it firsthand, though. I have seen the effects of it and them not talking. But yeah. So your job after Vietnam, or once you got out after Vietnam, shortly after Vietnam?
I got out in '68.
Okay.
And they brought me back from Vietnam, and they put me at Fort Meade, Maryland, for 6 months.
Okay.
To finish my stint there. And I got involved in the riots in Washington, D.C. with Martin Luther King's Resurrection City and things like that. But I got out, you know, and then when I got out, I come back to the phone company. You know, just took my uniform off and
Worked.
went to work.
So, what do you think your wartime experiences or your military experience, how did that affect your life?
Well, I kind of looked at it as a 3-year inconvenience. You know what I'm saying? I would have liked to not been there, but I was there, like thousands of other guys. You know, I was fortunate. I didn't get into the mud and the crap and the stuff like a lot of guys got into in that respect. But I mean, it was an interesting time in my life, and today there's guys that want to go back to Vietnam and see this and see that. I never left anything there. I couldn't care less if I ever step foot in that country again. You know what I'm saying? If you give me a free trip to the train Vietnam, I don't want to go back there. You know what I mean?
Understandable.
It was a period in my life where my wife had a kid while I was there. You know what I'm saying? So I missed out on, see, I went there in November. My son was born in June. So I missed a lot of this kid's life. And the time before, you know, all that, it was all gone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how do you make up for that? If you know what I mean. I have 3 daughters, and if any one of those 3 told me they were going to join the military, I wouldn't have objected. I would have steered them to either the Navy or the Air Force, if you know what I'm saying. Stay the heck out of the Army and the Marines. But, I mean, yeah, you know, I did it. I have some ill feelings toward the president, Jimmy Carter, because he left them draft dodgers back in this country. They chose to leave this country. They made their bed. I don't care how hard it was for them. You know, there's some of them still there, you know what I'm saying, because of their convictions. But, I mean, when he left them back in this country, that was a slap in my face for what I'd done. So I have ill feelings toward him for that. You know, Jane Fonda, I've gotten over Jane Fonda. A lot of guys, you mentioned Jane Fonda to a Vietnam vet, you know, pull them off the ceiling. I learned in that session with that doctor that if you hate someone, that person has total control. of you. Every way. I mean, I don't watch Jane Fonda movies. I don't go out, I wouldn't, if Jane Fonda was walk in that room, wouldn't impress me. I just wouldn't go there. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't go meet her or greet her or anything. But I don't physically hate the woman like some guys get downright, upset.
Right. That's good. All right, so what message would you like to leave for future generations that would hear this, given that, this is going to Library Congress?
Well, I don't like war. I wish we didn't have war. You understand what I'm saying? Now, there's always going to be idiots in this world. Mussolini, Stalin, Hitler. If you let those guys go, they owned Europe. You know what I'm saying? How long it would have stayed that way, I don't know. But they had to be stopped. But see, that was back when we fought a war. We didn't, okay, why did we drop the bomb on Tokyo? Everybody, oh my God, that's terrible. But they've estimated that there were millions of lives saved because of that culture. Those people never would have given up. Look at Iwo Jima. They were told to fight to the last man. I mean, it's their culture that made us do what we did. Because we had sent men on that island, we'd have lost a lot of men. Even there, you know what I'm saying? So every now and then the world comes up with your Hitler, your Mussolini, and somebody's got to say no to them. And I'm glad that, well, I'm not, I don't know how to say this. The United States is powerful enough to put most people in their place. But we stopped fighting wars in World War II. In Korea and Vietnam, they tied our hands, one hand behind our back, and said, go win this war. Now, if you read the history of Vietnam, remember Rolling Thunder? The bombing campaign of Saigon? Of Hanoi? Ho Chi Minh was almost about, they say he was 2 days. If the bombing campaign had went on one more week, he was ready to throw the towel in because they were destroying Hanoi. Literally destroying the place. And they stopped that bombing and let him catch his breath. And then we screwed the South Vietnamese. The leadership we had back then screwed them, just like the leadership we have today. They don't, you don't fight a war by standing in front of a camera and saying, I'm going to pull the troops out on January the 12th. You don't fight a war. They're giving Trump hell. Well, why don't you tell us what you're going to do? Well, if I tell you what I'm going to do, they'll know what I'm going to do. You don't fight wars like that. Patton, what'd Patton do? He didn't ask permission, didn't, he just did it. You know, took it. So if you're going to put this guy down, if I can tell somebody in the future, if this country starts doing something crazy, like Kuwait, when they took Kuwait, we went in, threw their asses out, and give Kuwait back to them. That's the way you fight a war. They've stopped collateral damage. Oh, we might kill somebody. Well, I'm sorry.
That's war.
That's war.
Yeah.
People get killed. I'm sorry. But more people get killed if you put the foot around. So if my advice to future generations, if you're going to go ahead and fight somebody, put them down. I don't want to do it. I'd hope to God my kids never had to do it. I had an interesting little thing with my oldest daughter. She met a kid. She's married to him now. He's my son-in-law. He jumped in to Tora Bora the night it opened up. The first night we went into Tora Bora, he was with the 10th Mountain. Jumped into Tora Bora, spent a year there, looking in the caves for Osama. And she come in one day, she met him, he was 2 months out of the Army. And she met him. Whew. And she come over to the house one day, and she was madder than a wet hen. She was ticked. I looked at her and I said, "What'd Casey do?" Well, Rachel and I, we want to go to the fireworks show tonight, and he don't want to go. Now, you're not a wartime guy, but I took a deep breath, composed myself, and there is a very good book, if you want to read a good book. It's called Nam Vet by Chuck Dean. This guy had PTSD so bad, so terrible, and it just drove him crazy almost before he got help. And in this book, one chapter is devoted to what he calls triggers, things that set PTSD off. And I went into my bedroom and I got this book. It's a little paperback about that big and about like that. I got it, opened it up to 7 fireworks, walked down there and I handed it to my daughter. I said, "Read this." She read it. She looked up at me. I said, "Read it again." I said, "I'm going to tell you something, little girl. That young man has been through something that I hope in Rachel's lifetime and the rest of your lifetime, you never, ever have to witness what that young man has been through. He don't see pretty. He don't think pretty. He smells smoke and gunpowder, and he hears boom. He reacts totally different to that." And I made her read the book, and it puts you in the mind of a soldier with PTSD. And it should be required reading by parents of sons or daughters that are in war. Because you don't force talk to them. You don't ask questions of somebody that's been in a war. I've learned that over the years. You let them talk to you, and you just listen. Because a lot of times at the chapter, guys will start talking, and everybody will just sit here and start listening. And he don't want answers. He just wants to kind of get something off his chest and have somebody listen. But he don't need answers, and that's the way PTSD works. I've been taught and figured it out. But I ended up giving that book to his dad, And his dad told me after he read that book, he says, my God, I see that in Casey's eyes. He said, I see things in his eyes that I don't think he could ever explain to me. That's his dad. So in future generations, I think war is here to stay. We ain't gonna get around it. Because if you leave it alone, it'll eventually come to us. So stop them over here before they get here. Yeah, that's my advice.
Closing this up, is there anything else that you want to say that we have not discussed yet, or anything you want to add to this?
I'd like to thank this generation of young men and women, because I was asked to come on down. World War II did their thing, Korea did their thing. I was asked, I tell people I was asked to come on down. I was drafted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Did my thing, didn't enjoy it. I got through it with the good Lord. The good Lord got me through Vietnam in the 60s. Every day after that's been a bonus. But I admire this generation of young men and women, because they're putting their name on the line, knowing what they're getting into, and knowing that they could be anywhere in this world in a heartbeat, in a war. And I just admire the hell out of them for doing that. Could I put my name on the line? I didn't volunteer for Vietnam or volunteer for the Army back then. I had a good job. I was making good money, working 40 hours a week. Why would I want to stop that and just go to the Army, So that's the one thing I want to say. I want to say this generation is stepping up. I hear bad things about them, but a lot of them out there doing their thing. So
That's great. All right. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you very much for your story.
Thank you.